Hey everyone, my name is Donna, and this is Phoenix Fire coming to you from Saskatoon, Treaty 6 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis people. Tonight's guest, retired anesthesiologist Wendy Gor-Hickman, is a Saskatoon woman in long-term recovery who has dedicated her life to helping people find their way to recovery. And she likes golfing and going to Africa and taking pictures of giant cats. Let's bring her in. Hey Wendy, how's it going?
Fantastic. How are you, Donna?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much.
Great to be here.
Is there anything that you'd like to say before we get started?
Oh, I'm just really happy to be here and share my story with you. Recover out loud.
Yes, recover out loud. So let's roll this story, please.
Let's do it.
Okay, so before we officially jump in, I'd just like to let our viewers and listeners know that tonight's live production is premier sponsored by Prairie Sky Recovery Centre in Leipzig, Saskatchewan. Tonight's episode is also brought to you in part by Stronger Together Canada, peer-led support groups by Moms Stop the Harm. All right, now that I've got that tongue twister over, why don't we get started with tell us a little bit about your journey, Wendy.
Okay, thanks, Donna. So I was born and raised in Saskatchewan on a very small town. I have a wonderful family. My 4 siblings, and I had a pretty white picket fence childhood. Like I really had no trauma. We just had wanted for nothing. I was popular. I was good in sports. I was good in music, and I was just a really, really happy kid. So I don't have any complaints or anything about my childhood. It was just fantastic. But coming from a small town, as we grew up, most of us started drinking alcohol at a fairly early age.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't just it was almost everybody. And so, you know, we worked hard and studied hard and did sports hard, but we started drinking at an early age.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time we were 14, 15, 16, you'd find us out in the country drinking on weekends. And I'll tell you, I knew from right when I started drinking that I didn't drink like my girlfriends. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I noticed very early on that my girlfriends would have 2 drinks and they'd be giggly and tipsy. And I could just seem to drink and really have no effect. And I used to tease the boys that I could drink them under the table. And you know, awful to say, but I often ended up being the designated driver. I mean, we didn't really have designated drivers, but it was kind of like, who's the most sober that will drive?
Right.
And it was usually me.
I remember we used to throw the keys in the air and whoever could catch them was the driver.
Exactly. So we started drinking at an early age, and I can't remember loving it, but it was just something that we did. I know that I, didn't really think much of it other than I thought I could hold my liquor. So fast forward into med school, early university days. I was determined to get into med school. That's what my dream had always been. So I studied really hard, had to work really hard for my marks, and I would work really hard all week, and then we would party on the weekends. When I was about 23, I think it was, we were at a medical bonspiel. I was in medical school by this time. And we were out in Humboldt, and we stayed over the weekend in this hotel to do this curling bonspiel. And the first night we got there, it was quite a big party every year. So a policeman came in and they brought a breathalyzer and they set it on the table and they said it was ours to use for the evening. And I gave my girlfriend an elbow and I said, look, I'm going to go blow in that breathalyzer after every drink, and I'm going to see when I hit 0.08. And there was a chart there that said, for my height and weight and age, I should be able to drink, 1.4 drinks before I hit 0.8. And I'm sure I slammed back 9 Ryan Cokes that night before I blew 0.8.
Oh my gosh.
Now, that's just red flags all over the place, telling me that I don't metabolize alcohol in a normal fashion. But at that point, it didn't mean anything to me. Now, had you told me back then that, oh, that's a sign that you're an alcoholic, you got to quit drinking, I wouldn't have done it anyways, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
because it wasn't a problem at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I mostly controlled my drinking, kept it to weekends, didn't drink and drive, studied really hard, got through med school, graduated top in my class in med school.
Well,
Then I went on to do a 5-year post-grad to get my anesthesiology fellowship. By the time I finished my anesthesia fellowship, I was having children. So I was able to give up the booze when I was pregnant and breastfeeding. And so it wasn't really till after my last kid was born and and I was done studying, and it's almost like I had less reason not to drink or to control my drinking. And I mean, we know it's a progressive illness, so not surprising that I just gradually was drinking more and more.
mm-hmm.
So it got to the point where I knew just the volume that I was drinking, that it was way too much. And I know the medical consequences, especially in women, of over drinking and liver dysfunction. And so I started making efforts to cut back and control my drinking. So like many alcoholics, I tried only drinking on weekends. I tried only drinking beer and wine and not drinking hard liquor. I tried counting the number of drinks, and no matter what my intentions were, it never seemed to work for me. Although I didn't get drunk very often as I was growing up, I found myself getting drunk more and more often, and I didn't like being drunk. I just like to have a nice little happy buzz going on, and it was getting harder and harder to get and keep that buzz. I remember quitting for a couple months at one point, and after that, I thought that I was okay to go back, and it was even worse than it had been previously. I remember saying to my husband, if I can't get my drinking under control, I got to go to rehab because this is ridiculous. But it was always next week, next month, next year, and it just never happened. So, I mean, although I didn't know at the time what the 12 steps were, I did know that I was powerless. I knew that once I started drinking, I didn't know when I was going to stop. I knew that some of the things I was doing were insane. I got to the point where I would end up taking my Go Cup to my kid's soccer game filled with vodka.
Mm-hmm.
I know that this is insane behavior, but I was justifying it. Mm-hmm. I tried so hard to quit, and I just couldn't. So finally, I think I got to the point where I thought, you know what? Maybe as long as I don't cross my lines in the sand that I've drawn for myself. So as long as I don't drink and drive, as long as I don't drink and work, as long as my kids don't see me impaired, and as long as my physical health is okay, maybe it's really not that big a deal if I drink too much. Mm-hmm. So one by one, I crossed all those lines in the sand. And although I was a drinker, I was a home drinker. And so I mostly started drinking when I got home, knew that I was going to be home for the evening. There were times when I had to go out and pick up a kid, and I did drive impaired. I did drive with my kids in the car when I was impaired. Then I got to a point where I would go into work at 5 p.m. for a night shift. And so if I didn't drink all day and then I didn't drink all night, I couldn't go 24 hours or 48 hours without drinking. So I started having a few drinks.
Would you get physical withdrawals, or was it more mental?
Well, it's more mental. At that point, it was mental. I did get some physical withdrawals right at near the end, but it was mostly just cravings. I just thought that I needed that vodka to feel. I was a rye drinker, and then I switched to vodka because I thought people couldn't smell it on me as much.
I was just going to ask you about that. If you switched to vodka for that.
Yeah, I think everybody does that. I think nobody's going to smell it on you. And, I also I did start having drinks before I went in on a night shift, and I justified that. I rationalized it and thought, it would be easy to look at me and say, how could a physician do that? How could you be that unethical? But at the time, in my mind, I could justify I needed it. Mm-hmm. So my kids saw me impaired, so I'd crossed three of the lines that I'd drawn for myself in the sand. And the only thing I had left was my physical health. So I was desperately trying to find some reason to quit or way to force me to quit. So I thought, well, surely I'm a doctor. If something's wrong with my physical health because of alcohol, I will quit. So I went to my doctor for my regular checkout, and she was doing some blood work. And I said, why don't you just do some liver function tests while you're there? And she ticked them off. And a couple of days later, I get the phone call saying, come in to review your blood work. I go back in. She says, your liver enzymes are way out of whack. And she said, you probably have a virus. So I think we should wait and repeat that in 3 months. And I said, do you think maybe it's because I drink too much? She said, oh, Wendy, you don't drink any more than the rest of us. It's not from that. Of course, I didn't tell my doctor how much I was drinking. But, we did see each other at social functions and all that. Physicians are so poorly trained when it comes to identifying addictions. And then addicts lie. Like, if she asked me how much I drank, I probably would have cut it down by half.
Yeah.
I would never tell anybody how much I would never show anybody. My whole social life was a matter of pre-drinking and post-drinking and hiding drinks, because there was no way in hell I was going to show any of my friends how much I drank. So anyways, did the liver enzymes make me quit drinking? No, I just didn't go back to the doctor. And, the harder I tried to quit, the more discouraged I got. I got depressed. I felt hopeless. I remember going to bed at night and praying to somebody that I didn't really know who was to get me out of this situation. And yet whenever anybody would come and offer me help, Wendy, you're struggling. Is there anything I can do? No, I'm fine. So like I had this mask on all my life. And in anesthesia, it was very easy because you're behind the ether screen, you've got a mask on, you're working by yourself, and it's all they can see is your eyes. And, you can be bawling behind your mask. And someone says, how are you doing? You say, oh, I'm great. Everything's just perfect. And I'd go to bed, and I just got to the point where I'd pray that I wouldn't wake up, because I didn't know that there was a way out. I was so self-centered. I thought that if I couldn't do it on my own, it couldn't be done. And I think that's a hole that many of us get into.
Yep.
They just, like, I knew I had a problem. I knew I had to quit, but I didn't know how. And I was afraid. There's so much shame and so much stigma. I just couldn't ask for help. As a physician, I'm supposed to be able to fix people, not admit that I've got this mental health problem that I can't handle, right? So you just keep procrastinating. So I would cry and I would pray not that I wouldn't wake up, and then the next day I'd get up and take a swig of vodka and go through it all over again. So it took an intervention. And I know for so many of us with addictions, we never get the help that we know we need until we paint ourselves into some kind of a corner that's so tight that we don't have any other option than to get help. Often it's a job or a spouse or legal issues or whatever. And for me, it was my work. So obviously I valued my medical license and my job. I was very good at what I did and I loved it. But one night on one of these night shifts, I had been drinking before I went to work. One of the nurses noticed that she thought something was off with me. Of course, in anesthesiology, the first thing that everyone thinks about is drugs, because we use fentanyl in our jobs every day. So a nurse reported that I was off one night, and I got called into the physician health program the next day. And they called me in the morning when I got home from my shift and said, you got to be here for a meeting at 3:00. And I said, oh, no, I can't. I'm too busy. They said, be here. So I spent the whole day fretting about this meeting. I knew what it was going to be. And I just fret all day long. And finally I went in with the attitude that if these assholes threaten my medical license, I'm going to tell them to take it and shove it up their asses. Because you know what? I don't need to work. I have money in the bank. My husband makes a good living. I don't need their bullshit. They can't tell me what to do. And so I went to that meeting with that in mind. And I got across the desk from these two doctors that were both in long-term recovery from drug and alcohol misuse. And they didn't blame me. They didn't shame me. They didn't accuse me of being unethical. They just told me a little bit about what it had been like when they were using and drinking, what had happened, and what their life was now, like now.
Mhm.
And one of them looked me in the eye and he said, Wendy, there's a better way to live.
Hmm. So it completely
It was
disarmed
like
you
a
then,
light
hey?
bulb. It did. There was a
Yeah.
light bulb that went off. I thought, I've been praying for this for years. This is what I've been praying for. And
Yeah.
it was like realizing that there was a higher power that was going to get me out of this crap. And I didn't know what the higher power was. I didn't care. I just
Hmm.
saw light at the end of the tunnel for the first time in years.
Hmm. I hear you on
So
that
they
whole
suggested
front,
I go
you
to,
know.
yeah, they suggested that I go to treatment. And I didn't really want to go to inpatient treatment because my kids were young, my 4 little boys, and my career. And, but I said, I'm ready. I'll do whatever because I need to get my life back.
Hmm. How old were your boys
So
at that time?
it was 2001 when I went to treatment. So they were 8 to 12, the 4 of them.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was hard leaving them. I went out to a treatment center recommended by the physician's health program out in Guelph, Ontario called Homewood. And it was inpatient program. And I stayed there the 30 days and just fell in love with recovery.
Beautiful.
It wasn't easy, but by the time I came home, I was just so, so happy to be sober.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Excuse me. Um, we have a comment coming in from Tiffany Payne. She wanted to say, I'm so glad you're here to share your story with us today. And I'm just going to send that to screen so everybody else can see that as well. So, how we're going to like kind of jump a little bit here, Wendy. How did you begin to foster relationships that you have within the addictions treatment community? Like you came out of recovery, and then so let me actually backtrack just again. What was the first year or two like in recovery for you? Was it a struggle,
Well,
or were you just so
everybody's
thankful?
different.
Yeah.
I was just on a cloud. I was on a pink cloud for 3 years, I swear. And so, like that day I made the decision to go to treatment, I always say that was the best decision I ever made in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But the other great decision in my life that I made also that day was to be open about my recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was for selfish reasons that I actually did it. But about 6 months before I went to treatment, another one of my residents went to treatment, and after she left, there was all this gossip in our department about, did you hear what she did? Oh, I heard this is what they found, and da da da. And there was so much gossip, and I thought I just don't need that.
Mm-hmm.
So I made the decision to tell people before I went to treatment. So the Friday before I was leaving, I got up at Grand Rounds, and so I had all like 60 of my colleagues and all my residents and all my nurses were at Grand Rounds. And at the end of Grand Rounds, I stood up and I said, I have a problem with alcohol. It's always alcohol. It's never been drugs. I'm going to treatment. Don't be happy for me. This is the best thing that's ever happened in my life, and I'll be back better than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the decision that changed my life because I went to treatment. Some people said, oh, you're setting yourself up for failure if everybody knows. And I said, well, that's a risk I'm going to take. So came back from, well, first I'm in treatment and everybody there is wondering what they're going to tell their staff and whatnot when they get where they've been because they all lied about where they were going. And I'm in treatment. I'm getting flowers and I'm getting cards and well wishes. And I came home and it was like I never had a single negative comment made. All I got was hugs and congrats and I'm so proud of you and you're so brave. And I said, well, the reason I told everybody wasn't because I was brave. It was kind of to cover my own ass, but whatever. But what it did was that it opened the door so that from that day forward, anytime anybody in my world, in the medical community, or anybody that knew me had a loved one with drug or alcohol problem, they'd say, well, I don't know what to do with them, but let's ask Wendy because she'll know.
Mm-hmm.
So people started coming to me as soon as I got back saying, and so like that asked me what to do and I didn't really know. So I'd say, well, I can take you to a peer support meeting and and so I at one point, my husband was going to print on the side of our minivan Wendy's AA transport because I was forever picking up a whole group of people to go to meetings. And I just loved being sober, and I loved to share the word. And I loved to try to help people. And, but I didn't know what I was doing.
Mm.
I remember calling my sponsor, who's also a physician, and I'd be crying and say, "Oh, I took this person to 3 meetings and they're still drunk and I don't know what to do. I can't make them quit." And so I needed a lot of mentoring. And then I started reading. And so I did a ton of reading about addictions. I started learning what resources we have in the community to help people.
Mm-hmm.
I started learning what resources we don't have in the community.
Mm-hmm.
I read a lot about what makes a good treatment center and what evidence-based modalities that you want in a treatment center. And so I started going around to visit treatment centers, interviewing their doctors and their psychiatrists and reviewing their programs, talking to their counselors, just learning as much as I could. And the more, I mean, people just found me through word of mouth. And, you know, there's never a week that goes by in the last 21 years when someone hasn't reached out to me by Facebook or by phone or by email saying, "I have a loved one," or "I am struggling with drugs or alcohol. Can you help me?"
Mm-hmm.
So just learn to navigate the pathway and help as many people. I was blessed with, you know, I got so busy with this sideline job that about 7 or 8 years ago, when my husband said, "I never get to see you. You give anesthetics all day and then you're gone all evening helping your people that are struggling, and I never get to see you." So I made a decision to retire from anesthesia, and I loved it and I miss it. But I thought, you know what? I have a skill set that not very many people have.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there's 65 other people in this city that give a pretty good anesthetic, and there aren't very many people that have the combination. I mean, the MD behind my name gives me a little bit more credibility, and then my lived experience
Mm-hmm.
just enables me to talk to people where they're at, you know, without shaming and blaming, and make them understand, just like those two doctors did to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
they
Can I ask a question?
one addict talking to another. Yes.
So you said, I gotta take these things off my own ear. You said your pink cloud, the first 3 years, you were on a cloud for the first 3 years. Tell us about the day the cloud popped.
Well, it didn't really pop. It just kind of faded. And I don't, you know, I stayed very active in my peer support meetings, and I stayed very active with the people that I was working with. But at some point, the pink cloud obviously faded, and I can't remember exactly when it was, but I had a relapse about 8 years in. I My husband was out of town for the weekend for work, and I was at home, and he drank around me. Like, he offered to quit drinking when I came home from rehab, and I said, "No, I don't think you need to." He doesn't drink very much, but he likes a glass of wine from time to time. And so anyways, he went away, and I opened up the fridge, and there was half a bottle of wine sitting in the fridge. And I just thought, I'm alone for 3 days. No one would know if I had drank that wine. So that led me to, as it always does, into a 2-year closet drinking relapse that was horrific. And it was even worse than before, because now I'm closet drinking because I haven't told anybody that I've relapsed. And so I'm trying to hide it. And, you know, I'd not drink for a couple of months, and then I'd think, oh, I didn't tell anyone I relapsed. I didn't declare a new sobriety date. So, you know, I'm just going to drink one more weekend and then I'll quit again. And it just never happened. And I didn't enjoy it. I hated every minute of it. I just kept trying to find that elusive buzz, but that buzz was so gone for me. So I didn't get back into recovery until 11 years ago, when again I had an issue at work. And same scenario as the first time, packing a Mickey in my briefcase when I went on a night shift. And hard to imagine that where drinking can lead us. But again, I had rationalized it, and I was so thankful when I finally got caught and got back on track. And so what that meant for me, I didn't go back to treatment, but I got back into my monitoring program with the Physicians Health Program, got back into my more peer support, got back into my counseling, and have managed to stay sober for the last 11 plus years.
Congratulations, Wendy. Did you say physician's monitoring program?
Yeah. So
what's that?
One of the reasons that pilots and physicians have both have a really high rate of incidence of addiction compared to the general population, but they also have a really high recovery rate. And in fact, I work on the Physicians Health Program now that works with all the physicians in the province, Saskatchewan Medical Association, that have addiction issues. And out of the 100 or so over the last 15 years, every single one has gone back to work. And pilots have a really high rate of recovery like that as well. And part of the reason is, number one, we value our medical licenses, and that's really important to us. And everybody needs hope of a future if they have a reason to stay sober. Mm-hmm. So that medical license is very important to us. But the other thing is that we're monitored. So before I could go back to work, I had to sign a return to work contract that said I will do this, 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 and this. So I'm going to go attend my 3 peer support meetings a week. I'm going to see my counselor twice a month, and I'm going to submit myself to random urine tests.
Okay.
As long as I practice medicine. So, and at first I remember hearing about this before I quit drinking, and just the thought of being called in for random testing scared the shit out of me. Mm-hmm. I was so offended by that.
Yeah.
And yet I know now what a valuable tool it is, because for those of us, you guys know, you're in recovery yourself, that little sleeping devil on your shoulder is sitting there waiting for a weak moment. But I remember going off to a conference in the States. I don't know how many years I was sober, but in the back of my mind, I had this little niggling thought, you know what? Nobody at this conference knows that I'm in recovery. I could easily just drink while I'm away and no one would ever know. Mm-hmm. And then in the back of my mind, I think, yeah, but Monday morning I'm back in town. I'm going to get called in for a urine test. And if it's positive, I lose my license.
Yeah.
So that monitoring program is really, really powerful.
It's funny, like you mentioned being offended by the idea. And back when I was having to do the ministry wanted random urine tests and whatever, and I was like, how insulting. How dare you not just trust me? Oh my God. It's like,
I've got 15 days.
Yeah. Sure. It's so funny, exactly. The things that we take offense to when we're still in that cycle, It's
I know. I thought that was the worst thing. And then, I realized very quickly that these random urine tests were my friend, because they were protecting me too. So, if anyone at work ever said, oh, Wendy's behaving a little bit odd today, I wonder if she's dipping into the fentanyl or drinking again, I could just hold up my list of twice a week clean urines for the last 11 years. And, I can prove I'm sober.
Did you ever do fentanyl? Did you ever take any into that?
No, praise the Lord. I never thought it was a good idea to put this shit into my body, because I'd be dead.
I'd be dead.
I would. And I used fentanyl every day for 30 years, and not once did it cross my mind. So for that, I am forever grateful.
That's incredible. Oh, I definitely could be trusted around that stuff back then. Now it's like whatever. And, my mom drinks, and I'm not even tempted to have even a sip. But, 5 years ago, no, that would have been a big fail. It's like,
yeah. No, I never got into any drugs. I tried smoking pot when I was a teenager, and I didn't like that. And I never tried anything else. I had Demerol after surgery once, and I hated it. So maybe that's why I never thought of, but I'm very grateful that I didn't go down that route, because it's pretty brutal. Mm-hmm. So these people started coming to me and asking for help. And I I just learned along with them. And so someone would come to me and they'd say, my son's alcoholic, and every time I tell him he needs help, he tells me to go screw off and I don't know what to do. And so I'd say, you know what, get me an hour coffee appointment with him and I can convince him that he needs help. I don't know where that'll lead, but I can convince him. And so I would meet with the kid for coffee and I would just kind of tell him what I just told you guys about what it was like for me, what happened, and how fantastic my life is like. And when it's coming from another addict or somebody who's walked that walk,
Mm-hmm.
you can see the light bulbs go on in their eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's then, yeah, I need some help. So what do I do? Well, that's the big question, because there are many pathways to recovery. There's not just one, there are many, and they're all a cause for celebration, right? So it's a matter of meeting each person where they're at and trying to figure out what they have access to and what the best option is. And often it's laying out a plan A, B, and C and saying, well, they'll say, oh yeah, I'll say, well, I really think that you need inpatient treatment. They'll say anything but inpatient treatment. I can't, my job's too important. Da, da, da. Okay, well, let's set up a plan A, which will be everything but inpatient treatment. And let's set a deadline of, 6 weeks from now. And if plan A fails, will you agree to plan B, which is to go to inpatient treatment? Mm-hmm. And they're always so sure, just as I was, oh, I can do it without inpatient treatment. So let's try it. And some people do,
Mm-hmm.
I have lots of people that have sobered up, got clean and sober without going to inpatient treatment. But a lot of people can't. And, there's a lot of variables, what you're on, what your recovery assets are, your home life, your spouse, your financial situation, your legal situation, so there's a lot of things that go into it. But, so I just, and it's not always the first plan that works. And sometimes it takes months and sometimes it takes years. I've had people that I've worked with for several years before I helped them find some pathway into recovery. So it's being creative too. Like I don't have any formal training. I learn as I go. I have a lot of resources. I have a lot of people that I can ask for help, people that are professionals, and I use them all the time. I'm forever phoning up Dr. Peter Butt, who's the, Suboxone, methadone addiction guru of the province, or phoning Edgewood Treatment Center in Nanaimo to talk to the counselors there. And yeah, I have a whole bunch of addiction counselor friends. And so I'm always asking for help. And no, I don't do everything right. But I am able to help a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's amazing that you utilize all these resources that many of us wish we had even just one of those individuals to reach out to and be like, what do I do? Especially when you're caught in that cycle, or if you're a family loved one of somebody caught in the cycle, just to have somebody to reach out to that has
I know
an idea of like,
people are afraid to ask. People are afraid to ask for resources because then they have to admit to somebody that their son or their daughter is a drug addict. And so they go online and they Google resources and they get sold off by some fancy website that has just Malibu treatment center for 120,000 US a month. Yeah. It's just a spa. Like, it's so easy to get, you're vulnerable and you're wanting to help your loved one so bad and you go down some rabbit hole. So, I'm hoping, everybody is hoping as we move forward that we will have a better resource list so people know what resource treatment centers will be graded. You'll be able to find out who's accredited and who's not, who's using evidence-based modalities, who's not. So we are moving in that way, but it's slow progress.
Yes, absolutely. On that note, we're just going to take a quick moment to let our viewers and listeners know that tonight's show is also brought to you by the Elizabeth Fry Society of Saskatchewan and Naranon groups of Regina and Saskatoon. To learn more about our sponsors, get on our email list, check out our upcoming streams and more, check out www.hardknockstalks.com. And while you're there, help support the platform and pick up some merch for the shop. From the shop, not for the shop.
I forgot to put Prairie Harm Reduction in there.
And Prairie Harm Reduction too.
Phoenix Fire is also brought to you by Prairie Harm Reduction, and we love you very much. We're sorry, Kayla, that we forgot to put you in there.
So anyways, so I think we started to lead into this, talking about some experiences you've had in helping people, and talk, like, let's hear about some of the successes that you've had.
Well, the successes are certainly what keeps me going. You know, I always say that when I gave anesthetics for a living, that nobody ever died. And in this side job of mine, people die. Mm-hmm. And so you do have to take, you know, be happy when you have successes. And I've got so many. I have moms that had, you know, cashed in all their RSPs and remortgaged their home, single moms, to send their kid to a good treatment center. And now those kids are 5 and 6 years clean and sober and just killing life. Mm. And, you know, the letters of support and love that I get from the moms, especially. I mean, it's not, I work with kids and adults, but, you know, to be able to help some young person who's about to ruin their life and get them back on track is just so rewarding. So one girl that I helped, in fact, she was on Dan's show. It took me like 3 years to get her into recovery, and it was just an ongoing, you know, her family had given up on her. Everybody had given up on her except me. And so, you know, I got her to treatment once. She came back, tried to rescue her drug addicted boyfriend, and was back in it in no time. But I kept her in my loop. Like, I would, you know, call her every once in a while, send her a text, and she'd lose her phone. So I would find an old phone and deliver it to her. She was homeless. And I just kept saying, you know, when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, let's try again. Let's try a different path. Let's find some way. And several years later, got her into St. Joe's Treatment Center in Estevan. She completed that, moved into a sober living home. She's like 1.5 years clean and sober, working, just a mecca in just a wonderful person in the recovery community. She chairs her own meetings. She helps newcomers. And yeah, those are the stories that keep me going, you know, and there's lots of them. I have lots of successes.
Sorry. When you say I got somebody into, you know, St. Joe's or whatever the case may be, like, can you clarify that statement for us? So you just like pick up the phone and be like, this person's coming, get a bed ready, or what? Like, how does that
yeah,
work?
Wouldn't that be it? Wouldn't that be the perfect? That's how it should be.
This is Wendy calling. Get a bed ready.
When
that'd be awesome.
Person is ready for treatment or any treatment processes, that window of opportunity opens and it slams shut in a big hurry. Mm-hmm. So you've got to hit them when that window of opportunity is open. So when I get talking to somebody, one of the first things that I ask them, and I say, I know this sounds a bit crash, but how much money do you have? Like, is there money in your family? Because if you can afford a private treatment center, say this is a person, let's say that absolutely, in my opinion, needs to go to inpatient treatment. Mm-hmm. You know, they're at risk of dying if they don't go to medical detox and treatment right away. And so I say, in a perfect world, you'd be able to go today. But so a private treatment center, if you got money, you can go today. And so in those cases, I will pick up the phone and I will phone and I'll say, I'm sending such and such out on the plane to Victoria tomorrow morning, and the bed will be ready for me. But that's a small select group of people that can afford that. I mean, you're talking, you know, $30,000 for 50 days of really good treatment at some of the programs that I really, really think are really good. And two of the ones, and I've gone out to, as I said, to visit these various treatment centers and interviewed their doctors and looked at their programs. And I won't recommend anybody going to a treatment center that I don't have full confidence in. People will phone and they'll say, what about this treatment center? And I'll say, I don't know. I can take a look at their website and talk to them, but I don't know because I haven't met them. So, but if I'm going to recommend somebody spend $30,000, I'm going to, refer them to a place that I know is evidence-based and got a really good reputation. So, for those people that have money or can access it, as I said, I know moms that have cashed in their RSPs to send their kids, and I have never had a person regret paying the money to go. Do they always stay clean and sober? No, but in of the several hundred that I've sent to private treatment, at last count was 85% of them were in pretty stable long-term recovery. So if you don't have that kind of money, then it's a whole new ball game, because the barriers that are put up to deal with provincially funded programs are horrific. So, every year over the last 10 years, things have gotten better. And for that, I'm very grateful that the progress is being made and that the government is putting more money into mental health and addictions, and we are making great progress. But it's still, if I ran into somebody that I thought needed medical detox and urgent treatment, and they couldn't afford to go to private treatment, the routine would be, okay, so first tonight you start phoning the detox units in the province and put your name on the list. And so phone the Brief and Social Detox Unit Saskatoon, phone Waccamaw, Moose Jaw, phone PA, put your name on the waiting list. And so they phone and put their name on the waiting list, and they're told, well, it will probably be a couple of weeks. But to keep them on that waiting list, they have to phone in themselves every morning for those 2 weeks until a bed comes. And if they don't phone, they miss their bed. Now, if every addict or alcoholic could get up in the morning and phone every day, they probably wouldn't need to go to treatment, right? But they can't do that. They don't have phones. They're on another binge. And so a lot of them fall through the cracks before they even get to detox. Say they do manage to get in 2 weeks to detox, and they stay either a week in Saskatoon or 2 weeks in Moose Jaw, and they go through detox. Detox alone is not enough, and it's not very safe in a lot of circumstances. If you're dealing with alcohol, it's one thing, but if you're dealing with opioids, if you detox somebody from opioids and then send them out on the streets, they're so likely to relapse. And if they relapse, they're likely to die because their tolerance is all gone, right? So they don't know how much to use. And there's a real high incidence of overdose death for people that are just out of detox or jail. So in an ideal world, you'd go straight from the detox to the treatment, but that isn't available. So you would go put your name on the list for treatment centers, but that might be 3 months. It might be 4 months to get in there. And so now you're supposed to get out of detox and stay clean and sober for 3 or 4 months till you can get a treatment bed. Well, again, if you could do that, you wouldn't need to go. So then a lot of people never make it to their bed, and then they give the bed to the next person. Then if you do get into that treatment center, you do a 30-day program, which is often 30 days, which is not enough, especially for meth and opioids. And then often they'll send you back home to the same situation where you don't have any community support and you don't have a chance in hell of staying clean and sober. So, those are just some of the barriers that exist. And as I said, things are improving. We have St. Joseph Estevan is the most progressive treatment center, in my opinion, in the province. It's only been open for a couple of years. It is not 30 days. It's open-ended, so closer to 50 to 90 days. They use evidence-based medicine. They have a medical detox right there. So you transition right from the detox when you're ready and stable, then you go right into the program. And then they have sober housing when you get out. So it's more the continuum of care, which is the ideal that we're looking for. And it's a fantastic program. Unfortunately, there's a long waiting list for it. So they're getting funding for more beds. They are expanding. There's other programs similar to it that are being planned for Saskatchewan. So I see a lot of hope in the future, but we need so many more beds, and we need good beds in the province.
And we need to roll them out faster than what's being delivered. Like unfortunately, the problem, for lack of a better word, is like outpacing by far the availability of access to anything. Like
Yeah.
it's.
For so many years, it was like they were doing nothing. The government
Mm-hmm,
was doing nothing to improve services.
mm-hmm,
But in the last, I mean, finally, all the grassroots organizations that have been yelling and screaming, I mean, the politicians say, if you talk to them one on one, they all understand.
mm-hmm,
All of them from all parties understand when you talk to them one on one. But then they get in their group and they say, but our voter base doesn't want us to go easy on drugs and alcohol.
mm-hmm,
And so it's a matter of educating the public that
mm-hmm.
in every investment in treating somebody, like to treat a person is so much cheaper than to jail them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that doesn't even take into consideration how productive members of society they're going to become versus repeat offenders going in and out of jail and coming back out and going back to selling drugs because now
Mhm.
they've got a criminal record and they
And breaking into cars and robbing places and all
oh
these sorts of things that
well
everybody complains about, but all they want to see is more policing instead of more recovery. At least the
it,
voter base that the politicians
it
continue to
does.
refer to. But
You can't incarcerate your way out of this problem.
no.
And it's if you look at our jails, you talk to anybody from the correctional system, they'll tell you that 95% of the people in our jails are due to drugs and alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
They were, like you say, if somebody's addicted to opioids and they've got a $500 a day habit that they need to live, and they don't have a $500 a day job, they've got three options. They're going
Mm-hmm.
to break and enter and steal shit. They're going to sell, or they're going to prostitute.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's not, I'm not judging them for doing that. They
No,
need to get that money to get those drugs.
absolutely.
So I mean, it's a circle. So I mean, every person that's arrested should get offered the option of treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And in many places in the states, they do that. First time offenders get automatic option of jail or treatment.
Really?
And yeah, and they've shown that they save billions of dollars
For
by
sure.
treating them rather than incarcerating them.
Yeah. Well,
But
if the
again, it's a matter
Americans can do it,
of
why can't we?
I know, and not all of the Americans do it, but certain
Like,
pockets do it.
you often hear people, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna backpedal a little bit there because we do have American viewers, and that was not meant to be like a dig. But what you often hear is people complaining about the privatization of the jails and stuff in the States, and it's like this money making thing. So that's where that comment came from. Like if
Yeah.
they can do it, I see absolutely no reason why it can't be done here where it's not private. It's not for profit jailing. Like this is, provincial money or federal money, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, no, I hear you and I agree with you completely. I know that there are certain parts of the states that have made huge progress, but it is hard everywhere to get the public behind you. Like even safe consumption sites, right?
Yeah.
It's hard for me as an educated person to even talk to some really educated people and try to convince them one on one the value of a safe consumption site.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, if I can't convince you and you're a really educated guy, I'm never going to be able to convince the average Joe how
Mm-hmm.
much benefit we get from safe consumption
Mm-hmm.
and
Well,
how cost saving it is.
and I think that one of the largest problems is people get hung up on the fact that people are using drugs somewhere very specific. So it's got this sort of enabling sort of a label attached to it. However, everybody seems to overlook or is ignorant of the fact of all the other services that are available, including that sort of bridge between the using and the potential to like, hey, if you get sick of what's going on, we can help you get over there. But everybody is like
Yeah,
hyper focused on this.
I know if somebody's shooting up every day behind the dumpster, they're never going to have a clue that there's a better way to live.
Mm-hmm.
And so then they're coming into a place where they can, number one, use safe supplies, Number one, have somebody there for overdose protection, have somebody there to look at that abscess in their arm and get them some medical attention really early, but also to say to them, hey, Jim, when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, look at, I've beat this. I'm 5 years clean now, and life can be great, and I can help show you the way. And then you keep planting these seeds in people's head, and then one day the light goes on. Now, not for everybody. Some people don't want sobriety and abstinence. But I mean, even like Suboxone, the first line of treatment in opioid addiction is Suboxone treatment. And if somebody's out injecting behind a dumpster, they're never going to get on Suboxone. But the minute they get on Suboxone, then they can become productive members of society. They're not out robbing and stealing and selling and prostituting. They can hold down a job. I mean, it's just, yeah, but it's really hard to convince everybody of these benefits.
Absolutely. And, and then on top of that, you have that next level of generation not going into care or seeing the trauma of witnessing parents in active use. That's out of control. Like, there are so many benefits. It's so frustrating. It blows my mind that, and it is so obvious too. Like, it's like, why can't you see the forest for the trees? Like, is that?
I know. Sometimes they only understand with their pockets, but the statistics are there that shows them how the cost savings are.
But that's the other layer to that.
When Portugal decriminalized drugs 20 years ago, they were able to shut 10 prisons because they had no more criminals. And the amount of money they saved by diverting that money into addiction treatment, they've gone from being one of the highest drug usages in Europe to the very lowest drug use and the very lowest overdose death rate. It's amazing what they've done by being on top of this and not stigmatizing drug use to the degree that we do here.
Yeah, we got to stop making this a moral issue and put some humanity back into this situation. So I'm curious, like, I'd like to know, we talked about the positives and the successes that you've had. Like, how do you handle those failures, and like, how do you sort of take care of yourself that you don't carry that as much as perhaps somebody else might?
Yeah, and as I kind of alluded to that earlier, when I first started helping others, I did take it home with me, and I bawled my eyes over, every time I couldn't get somebody sober. And I had some really good mentoring from some of my mentors in how to look after myself and step back. And over the years, I have learned to do it. Now, I mean, I still cry. I've lost a couple of very, very dear friends that I've been trying to help, many over the years. And yes, it hurts, but I have learned, like, I mean, I do have to look after myself. I'm quitting my other job was huge in that I have more time. I'm very blessed. I'm retired. So this is I'm still able to cycle and golf and travel, and I can fit my work in around my own retirement. Rick, my husband, always used to laugh, and he'd always say, I can tell we're leaving on holidays tomorrow because all of your kids are going AWOL and relapsing and needing you when we're trying to get ready to go. And that used to be the case. But I've learned to, I'll say to someone, yes, I can meet with you, but you know what? I can't meet with you until tonight, or I can't meet with you tomorrow. And so I do draw some boundaries. And I've learned to step back from people. There are people that, like, I mean, I used to just be like a dog after a bone. If I was working with somebody, I wouldn't ease up. But now I've learned that, you know what? Sometimes you just have to plant a seed, step back, check in with them, plant another seed, step back, and wait until the next shoe drops. And so if you've planted those seeds in the person's mind that there is a better way to live, and that there is some hope that they might have a better future, then the next time they get a DUI, or their spouse kicks them out, or they lose a job, then that's kind of, they painted themselves into that corner, and now they're ready because they know that there's another option. So I have to be patient, and I've just learned to do that. Um, I think I'm a lot better at it. I still do take it home with me to some extent, but I think I'm a lot better at, and I eat well, I sleep well, I exercise lots, and I do have my leisure time. So I'm pretty blessed that I'm in this position that I don't have to try to earn a living from doing this. I can just do it as a hobby, and um, it's very fulfilling. It's pretty amazing.
It sounds wonderful. What you do for people is just so beautiful. Like I would aspire to that. In all honesty, Wendy, like it's just amazing.
We all
So
have our own niches. What you guys are doing is pretty freaking amazing as well, Donna. Don't underestimate what you're doing.
well, thank you, Wendy. That's kind. And I do. I sometimes like I every once in a while will run into somebody out on the street and they'll introduce themselves and say that they watch the show, and I'm like, I'm really glad that you came up and said hello, because like in this studio, I feel like sometimes we're in this kind of a bubble, and it is in some ways disconnected from, like, you're very hands on. You see that, you know the end result or the process, and it's, there's something tangible, whereas here it's a little bit more kind of a,
Yep.
it's
We
online.
back.
What?
We working back. We see no smiles.
What?
Yeah. No, it is nice to get positive feedback and get know that you're making a difference. And I mean, that's all that we need to continue on with our struggle. We know we're doing the right thing, and we know that the more we talk about addiction, the more we talk about recovery, the more free people are going to be to ask. I mean, if no one knew that you and I and Dan were in long-term recovery, they wouldn't ask us for help. Right?
Well,
they need to have somebody to ask.
Absolutely. I mean, like myself, when I was still inactive, if I'd seen me current on the street, I'd have been like, that bitch don't know shit. So yeah, I mean, I think it's really important for those sort of smoking mirrors to come down and put a real face on things, because you just never know who's actually walked in those shoes.
Well, I know. The thing is that for many, many years, people in recovery hid out in church basements and never told anybody. They'd say, "Oh, I have to be anonymous."
Yeah.
And anonymity, we're supposed to be anonymous according to our 12-step program, but we're not supposed to be anonymous about our recovery. So if everybody in the world knew that their doctor and their teacher and the policeman and their Safeway clerk were all in long-term recovery, it would be a lot easier for people to ask for help, to know that they're not the only one. And when you know that you're not the only one, it's so much easier to ask for help.
Absolutely. So on that beautiful note, Wendy, is there anything?
Comments.
Oh, comments. I forgot.
Yeah.
Oops. So first one, Tiffany Payne says, I'm so glad you're here to share your story with us today. Thanks for your comment, Tiffany.
On screen.
Sorry.
I'm
so bad with this. I'm always scared I'm gonna like shut the stream down or something. Like, I have a bad mojo with computers and buttons, so I just generally don't. And Jill Vanderland says, always love listening to Wendy's experience, strength and hope. She has an awesome story and continues to help others on her journey. Thank you, Jill, for your comment.
Thanks, Jill. Love you.
And Shelley Kirkpatrick McEwen says, I've heard your story many times, but I'm so proud of you. I love you.
Thank you, my sister.
And our good friend Nicole says, a big congratulations. Thanks so much for sharing your story.
Thanks, Nicole.
And Tiffany Payne again says, I remember when my therapist once told me that I keep myself on a very tight leash. And I told her I absolutely have to. So true.
So true.
And Zoria Broughton says, wealth of knowledge, Wendy. Thank you.
Thanks, Zoria.
And Tiffany also says, so healthy. My goodness. I love you, Wendy.
Thanks, kiddo.
Thank you, everybody, for all your comments. And I think that is now the end of them. I'm getting the thumbs up, so I haven't missed anything. Thank you. Thank you. So, is there anything that you would like to leave us with tonight?
No, I just want to thank you again for having me. I always tell Dan that, I'll open my mouth anytime anybody asks me to speak. And, people can find me on Facebook. I'm not very hard to find. And I just so appreciate what you two are doing.
Thank you very much. And you as well, Wendy. We're going to let you go for the evening. Take care and hope to talk again soon.
Okay, see you guys soon. Good night.
Take care. All right, that's it.